in English, which we will start inshallah ta'ala later, because we have had a break for about 2 months or more, and we will have to decide upon the subjects that we would like to tackle. In the meantime, tonight I will present a few words to tackle in the next inshallah weeks, because the news that have been coming from all over of sudden deaths, young people dying all of a sudden, departing of the friends and the family members, all this contributes to serious thinking. For the Prophet ﷺ said that there will come a time at the end of time, what we call Akhir zaman, when there will be sudden deaths and there will be young people dying, men and women, and the cause of deaths will be unknown, and no one will be able to explain how the death occurred. It will be a man who was talking to us just a few minutes ago, does not reach home and dies on the street, or a man who rose up for his breakfast and died before he completed it, or a man who got up to get ready for his office, before he could dress up, he died. When such things occur, the Prophet said, "O men and women, be careful that is the end of time, and that it could be your turn, because no one knows how long he is going to live on earth." So the principal point I would like to touch upon tonight, before we discuss and pray for those who have recently departed and gone, or talk about them, we would like to explain to you the difference between how the world is thinking and how Islam wants us to think. It's very important. It may be a bit heavy going, but it is very important, because there lies the difference. In this world, we talk of so many diverse aspects of life as if each one of them was the principal part of life. Sometimes we find people arranging debates like, let us discuss Islam versus science, as if science was something else and that Islam was something else. And then we try to bring out some verses of Quran to prove that science says today what Islam said 14 centuries ago. It may not be a futile exercise, but at the same time, it gives me an inkling that perhaps we are thinking that there is a dichotomy, that there are two separate things. Alexis Carrel, one of the Nobel Prize winning physicists, has written a book which is called Man the Unknown. Man the Unknown. In this book he writes how people from different sciences and people of different vocations and professions look at a man. If you take him to a doctor or a surgeon, he looks at him in accordance with the requirements of his profession, how his heart functions, how his liver functions, how his kidney functions, what is his blood pressure. To him, a man is therefore a system which must be observed in that light. A man is someone who has a kidney, who has a pair of kidney, who has a heart, who has got this sort of blood pressure. His temperature must not exceed this much, and that's all. To him, a man therefore is a living machinery, and he looks at him as a machine, just like as a mechanic looks at a motor car to see that it functions properly. But to a psychologist, a human being is his mind, and when you go to a psychologist, he does not look at your pulse, does not try to see your pulse or your heartbeats. He is looking at your mind. Psychoanalysts will sit with you and discuss with you questions to probe into how your mind functions. And similarly, an economist or a businessman, he looks at man as a part in a society who will earn and produce, his success will be measured by how much he can earn and how much he can save and how much he can productivity. A philosopher looks differently at man. Everyone looks at man differently. Alexis Carrel wants to tell us that a man is not simply a mind, nor is simply a body, nor is he simply producing agency. He is much more than that, above that. But the various sciences look at him according to the discipline to which it is tied, to which it is confined. It cannot go beyond that. This is where Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, said, Al-ilmu nuqtatun katharaha al-juhala. It is something which really one must always ponder over. He said, ilm is only a point. It has been diversified by human ignorance. Knowledge is only one point, but it has been diversified, branched out by our ignorance. Because that means that if I am an economist, I am not a biologist. If I am a biologist, I am not a philosopher. But because of our ignorance, we have made so many branches out of it. But there is one viewpoint. There is one viewpoint. There is one outlook which must be central to everything. Therefore, in this world, many young people come to say, "Sir Mulla Sahab, is it going to be Allahu Akbar and fasting in Ramadan? What about business? Why don't you speak about economics? Why don't you speak about how to make mapesa in Islam? Why don't you speak about other things? Is it only Allahu Akbar and things like that?" They don't understand that it is not only Allahu Akbar, it's everything. But before we come to understand, there has got to change, something has got to change. The outlook has got to change. What is the meaning of that? Many friends come and say, look at the Western culture, look at the technological advancement. I say that there is one viewpoint. Everything else is part of the game. Try to understand this. Everything else. Technology, philosophy, psychology, all sorts of things, they are all covered, provided you understand one viewpoint. In this world, we are being told to believe that this world, this universe, is a book which has no beginning and no end. It is a book. The author is unknown. The first cover page is lost. And the last page where the book concludes is also lost. So we are told that it is a book which has no beginning or which has no end, or rather the beginning is not known and even the end is not known. There is a supposition that there was a Big Bang. And nowadays from Oxford University we have another supposition, a very recent one, that now there is going to be a big crunch. There was a Big Bang with which the world started. At the end of time, there's going to be a big crunch where everything will collapse. But no one knows who started the bang, and no one wants to tell us who will start the crunch. If you read Hawkins, he is telling us about the big crunch very soon coming up. Well, but who started it? No one. The difference between all this and Islam fundamentally are two things. Especially I say this for my young boys, young friends, young ones, boys and girls, to understand. From here starts religion. From here starts deen. First difference, that the book, Islam says this universe is a book, but it has got the first page, and the author is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the meaning. It has its first page, that is called Mabda, the beginning, Allah. And it has definitely the final page, which is called Ma'ad and Qiyamah. So this is the difference. There is an author. I remember I read once that one professor, as usual, stood up at a university which is renowned and said, "Oh people, we must now wake up from the opium of religion." You know, opium. That means as if religion was an intoxicant. If other people have misused religion, if people fight in the name of religion, people fight in the name of aqaid, if they have misused it, you cannot blame the religion. Try to understand there is a difference between the two. Rise and wake up from this slumber. There is no beginning in this earth. That is what he said. It just started with water, and from water, from single cells, and from single cells multiplied into many cells, and so we have life today, by adaptation, by natural selection, by mutation, and whatever. Right? And in the beginning, one student who must have come to Stanmore sometimes and heard the stories even from our mouth, he stood up and said, "Sir," yes, he said, "but where did the water come from? In the beginning there was water, but where did it come from? Where did it come from? Was there any author for that water? Was there any creator for that water?" I always say, and I say this with conviction, that it is easier to prove the existence of God. It is difficult to disprove the existence of God. If you are really intellectually inclined, obstinacy and stubbornness is something else. But if one is a systematic thinker and has got a method in his thinking, he will find that he comes to a conclusion that there is an author to this book. So Islam tells us that there is a beginning. And because there is a beginning, because there is an author, therefore we are responsible to him, and his authority is supreme. Just now we read Yasin. We don't know what Surah Yasin is. We know it only that it will be read for the dead. Or if somebody is not dying, we read it so that he is dispatched. Because he's not dying. Now, so Mullah Sahib, you come and read so that he may soon go. But Yasin was not only for the graveside. The Prophet said Yasin is the heart of Quran. Heart of Quran. Qalbul Quran. Why? Because there are lots of things which I could say about Yasin, but I'm just going for the last ayah. فَسُبْحَانَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Glory be to him, to Allah, subhanallah, biyadihi malakut, in his hands, that means in his total control, is the authority and kingdom of everything. Malakut is the essence of kingdom. Wa ilayhi turja'un, you will all return unto him. In this ayah, there is a summary that this universe has a beginning, which is God and malakut in his hands. It has the end when you will return unto him. Yasin is a summary of Quran. Yasin is the message to us that there is a difference. Now, let us take an example to make my point very clear. I'm a scientist. What prevents me to become a scientist? If I'm a Muslim, can I become a scientist? People talk to me sometimes as if, Mullah Sahib, Islam has no scientists. Islam has no scientists because Muslims don't want to become scientists. If I talk of my community, or if I talk of myself, why talk about others? I want my children to be educated. Value base is mapesa. I want to find out, if I educate him, how much will he soon return. I have heard with my own ears when we tell him that, look, I want my son to become a doctor. Why? He is not cut for it. There is no aptitude, but no, I want him to become. He is the one to get qualified. The father decides. Why? Because the investment must bring return. After all, it's a commercial community. So if you look at it that way, you cannot produce man of original talent. Now, if the community did not produce, it is not Islam which is preventing it. Now, in Islam, to be a technologist, to be a scientist, to be a thinker, to be a good writer, to be an economical figure, to be a thinker, to be a good poet, to be a cultured man is a part of it. The only difference between a scientist in Islam and a scientist outside Islam is that this scientist will always believe that there is one in his hand, there is authority, and there is an end, therefore there will be a responsibility. Bertrand Russell, in his book, Power, read the book which is called Power. He is a philosopher of Britain, and he died few years ago, when as long as he was alive, Britain was proud of him. Bertrand Russell, an agnostic, a disbeliever, one who was deceptively simple. That man, he writes in Power, in those days when nuclear weaponry had not yet developed to an extent they have developed today. He says that there are scientists of controlling certain missiles and certain weaponry, nuclear, in America as well as in Russia, with radar which is so inadequate that they may pick up certain thing and interpret it as a missile coming from the enemy. And if that scientist just decides that I must immediately press the button for an anti-missile so that it is hit, and if he presses the button, a nuclear war can start immediately in this world. Because this scientist thinks that there is a missile coming and he shoots the anti-missile, it turns out to be a bird and not even a missile. What will happen? He says, he writes in his book, that the opposite side will think that this side started the war, while this side will say that we defended before it came, we preempted. No one in this earth will live to decide who was the aggressor and who was the defender. Then he writes that science is a useful weapon in human hand, provided there is a sense of responsibility. If there is no sense of responsibility, what are the politicians today doing? Let us be very candid about it. For the sake of politics, people are dying. There is no responsibility. But if there was a responsibility because there is an offer, Allah, and there is a day to return an answer, then anyone who acts in whatever capacity will first think that I am responsible to the power that dominates, and tomorrow I am going to answer. So in Islam, right from the family, as a husband, inshallah we will have marriages very soon, the moment a young boy marries or a girl marries, the first thing that we have got to tell him is that, Baba, this is the part of the game, there is nothing new that we're going to do, it's marriage. But it is in this universe where there is the first page, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is the last page where we will go back to Him. Therefore, whatever you do as a husband, you are responsible to Him right now and tomorrow. The life will change. We don't tell our young people that there is a beginning and there is an end. Although we tell them Tawheed, Khuda ek che, Khuda ek che, we fail to tell them the application of this part of faith in our life. We don't bring them vividly to say this is how it governs your life. So what stops us from becoming anything that we want to become, provided that we understand this? This is the first viewpoint of a Muslim, that he looks at the whole world with one authority on one hand and knows there's going to be a day of return. This is one. And second difference, my dear friends, is that Allah has made you and me, human beings, as Khalifa. Khalifa is not Khalifa. In Urdu, Khalifa ji means a barber. Khalifa ji. In certain parts, Khalifa is a barber. Or whenever I say Khalifa, people think of those three Khalifa. I'm not talking of those three Khalifa. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. Allah says, إِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ. When Allah told the angels, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. I'm going to appoint on earth a Khalifa. Not a successor, a deputy, a vicegerent. Immediately the Malaika objected. Immediately. قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. Oh Allah, are you going to bring onto this earth creation which is going to create mischief, shed blood, while we are here to sing your praise and glorify your name? Allah said, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know what you do not know. And Adam was created. We are children of Adam. And therefore, man came on this earth as a Khalifatullah, as a vicegerent and deputy. Because of this viewpoint, man has got to understand that there is some work which Allah has deputed to us to complete. A Muslim does not live like a vegetable. A Muslim does not live like for himself alone. A Muslim lives for others, and Muslim lives to serve humanity and to serve his purpose of life. Very important, because we have been deprived of all this. When I talk of this from my heart, that we have forgotten to tell young men, my young man, you are 18, entering into adolescence, you are a vicegerent of God. You are Khalifa of God. Life is not only for playing volleyball and football, although I am not against volleyball. I am not against sports, I am all for it. But it is not only for that. It is not only for starting dukas, businesses and all that. Now when I talk of this community of mine, I talk and I say this because we belong to each other. Look at it now. The moment a child is grown up, married, what is our expectation? Our expectation is that he will inshallah now work. If he wants a shop, father will provide with some investment, he will start. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. A community which does not have one good writer. A community which can speak no language or can boast to belong to no language. If you talk Gujarati the way Gujaratis speak, our people say, you are talking Sanskrit. If you talk Urdu, we are told change it, because Urdu we don't understand it. If we talk Farsi, it is out of question. If it is Arabic, much as we clamored and shouted, but the classes of Arabic begin with 50, 40 children and end up with one. We have seen it. Right? Now comes English, for which we say English. English language, in its literature, with all its grandeur, with its style and finery and finesse, do we understand that way English? as a literature or just English to be able to transact our business, to be able to travel underground, or to read a newspaper and sometimes even miss the point? Is that the way we understand English? To which language do we belong? No nation and no community on this earth could ever be guided without language. And this is the community which has got no language to talk. So the culture does not exist because there is no language. You write a book. If you write a book, 1,000 copies of one Islamic book cannot be sold in this community because people are simply not interested. Jehovah's Witness, when it prints its book, it's 86,000 copies per edition. How many? 86,000. We cannot sell in this community, not only London. I'm talking of the community in England. No, I'm talking of the whole community. North America, East Africa, India, Pakistan included. We cannot sell even 1,000. Free they will take. If I keep it Abdul Muhammad's table there and just keep free, then it goes. But to pay £1 for a book which might be worth £5, no. In which language will you talk? We had a good discussion with some friends of mine, very well-meaning friends. They were telling me, Mullah Sahab, they said in our own language, हमें एकला शू करी, हम अकेले क्या करें? हम अकेले क्या करें? It's just like this, that sometimes there was a scheme in Saudi Arabia, before it was Saudi, in Hijaz, that Hajis sometimes need water, they need milk. In those days it was all scarcity. So the chief of the clan said that from our tribe of about 50,000 people, let us prepare one big house and everyone should bring only one casket, one mashk, one bottle of milk. 50,000 bottles of milk, the house will be full. And then we will give away this milk for Hajis to drink as much as they want, and then when it is finished. One man started thinking, was very clever. He said, all of them will bring milk. If I took water, nobody will take notice of it. I mean, who is going to take notice if I take? Now he forgot one thing, that everyone was thinking the same way. With the result that when the day came to fill the house was full of water. Everyone thinks that way. मैं अकेला क्या करूं? And they forget one thing, that the revolutions on earth took place with one man in the beginning. One man. It starts from there. Provided there is language, vehicle where people read or they listen and understand, then the revolution starts. And the seeds are sown. And the germination is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if there is no one to read, if there is no one to understand, if there is no language, how are you going to communicate? This is the problem we are all facing. Mr. Murtaza Bandali is selling books there. Some of the books are intellectual books. Some of them are meant for primary readers. Those books are lying for how many days and years? I do not know. He knows better. I'm not trying to promote his business. But I'm just trying to tell you that this is the problem anyone faces, whether it is he or anyone. Thousands and thousands of pounds can go for nothing. A book, if it is quoted at 10 pounds, we try to tell Murtaza bhai, ketla taka તમે આમાંથી નફો ઉપાડો છો? It's a tragedy. Communism today is dead, but it started with one man, Karl Marx, and his friend, Angel. But do you know that his book was not read for 100 years? 100 years after his death, his book came up from the shelves. And when people read, whether it was for the right or for the wrong, whether it was for the good or for the evil, but it changed societies, it created governments. In 1963, Ayatollah, today we talk of Ayatollah al-Khomeini. Where were we when he was exiled in 1963? Where were we? One man alone. But he went on talking again and again and again till people listened to him. He wrote. He propagated whatever he wanted to say. But he said this, one man. It again caught fire. And then, of course, everybody started talking the same language. The first person who spoke on Islamic unity and pan-Islamism, rising against the forces of evil, the way I have talked today, that there is a book, Universe is the book which has got the first page and the last page. And the author is Allah. Authority is His. We are going to return to Him. Therefore, there is a responsibility, and Muslim must rise as a Khalifatullah. The first man who spoke about it about 150 years ago was Sayyid Jamaluddin Afghani, and the man was kicked from one place to another, from Afghanistan to Turkey, from Turkey to Misr, from Misr to Russia, from Russia to London, from London to Paris, from Paris to Beirut, from Beirut again back to Misr, from Misr again to Turkey. Finally he died. A man who lived only 60 years of age had to move and move and move. Everywhere, everywhere. The governments which did not like his approach created problems from him. He was deported from one place to another. He could not live anywhere in peace. This is history, we know this. But everywhere that he went, he was told, Sayyid, why are you after this? Forget about it. We are prepared to give you a portfolio. We are prepared to give you ministry. And the answer he gave was, which is in his book, Al-Urwatul Wuthqa. He says, Ya Darwish. He talks to himself. O Darwish, kun faylasufan tarad dunya ul'uba. Be a philosopher so that you may see this world as a toy, as a game. Don't see it like as if it was all in all. And again he says, pursue your goal in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for He is the author. And then he said there will come a time when you will die and you will say. This gives me a hint that he was definitely a Shia Ithna Ashari. There is no doubt about it, because it is there. He says when the time will come when you will die, pursuing your goal, you will say, Fuztu wa Rabbil Kaaba. And this Fuztu wa Rabbil Kaaba was not uttered by anyone but Ali ibn Abi Talib. Fuztu wa Rabbil Kaaba. I have succeeded. I have completed my goal by the Lord of Kaaba. This is what Mawla said at the time when the sword hit him on 19th of Ramadan. Immediately he rose and said, Fuztu wa Rabbil Kaaba. He raised his head and said this. And this is what Jamaluddin said. People used to ridicule him. People used to deport him. Governments deported him. British government, French government, Turkish, Osmani Empire, all of them were against him. So where do we stand? Today, as I end my lecture, when I say this every time, people sometimes don't understand. When I speak of taqwa, people say, Mullah talks of taqwa, taqwa, taqwa. But inshallah they will remember this. That this is not a strange animal. It is an assertion, an affirmation that I am a Muslim, and that I believe that there is a beginning and there is an end. I am answerable to Him when I return, and I am a Khalifatullah. I have got certain duties to perform on that, within my limitations, whatever. Be a leader of a community, president, secretary, whatever, even head of the family, or whatever. Even a simple member of the community, if I remember this, life changes. So now, the summary is that there is a viewpoint from which you look at it. There are people who are looking at different ways. There are people looking at Technology having advanced, therefore life is azad and free. You can act like animals. And then we say, look, how these Western people live. We would like to live that way. We forget that they don't have the beginning and the end. We have the beginning and the end. And the result will be what people don't want to see. People don't want to study. The result will be the waywardness of life that they have. Where a husband and wife don't live as husband and wife. Where a daughter cannot be told. Where the life is that of an animal, however glamorous and glittering it may be. Where there is no responsibility toward anyone. When now authority can work, not even an elderly person can talk to a young man to say that this is wrong. Where the values have changed. And here, those constant values of Sharia are immutable. And therefore the life is different. So in the next issues that we will discuss so many things, this will be the guideline and this will be the guiding factor. That our viewpoint is different. Our standpoint is different. Our outlook towards life is different. It's not that only Allahu Akbar and Subhana Rabbil Azim wa bihamdi and fasting. No. Even when you are in your shop, even when you are teaching, even when you are lecturing, or when you are studying in the school for the highest graduation, you don't forget one thing, that I belong to Him, and I have returned unto Him, and I have got a duty to perform. If this remains, everything will change. There will be no problems in us. May Allah guide us and enable us to understand these very fine points. It may be heavy going. It may be very philosophic. It may not be very interesting. But it is important, and this is the only difference. There is no other difference. We differ from others because of our outlook, if we have cultivated it. If we have not, then of course the thinking is always confused. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.